My name is Septimus Roll, a name that carries the weight of lineage and obligation. My father, Thorfinn Roll, was one of the Dark Lord's devoted followers back in the First War. He died before Voldemort's downfall the first time, leaving me with a heritage I could not easily renounce. I grew up in a household that lauded the purity of wizarding blood, recited genealogies at the dinner table, and pinned the blame for every wizarding difficulty on muggles or blood traitors. I'm 31 now, and for nearly half my life I've walked in my father's footsteps. At first out of fear, then out of a twisted sense of duty, and finally out of habit. But it's a path that's grown thornier as the years have passed. Despite my black robes and a mask I've worn more times than I can recall, a spark of doubt has started to smoulder in me. I've witnessed horrors, yes, but I've also seen acts of courage and kindness from the very people I was supposed to despise. A flicker of remorse has begun to bloom inside me, and these days I find it harder to ignore. Yet, even with that stirring guilt, what I want remains maddeningly elusive. I want escape. Freedom from this cycle of destruction, and a chance to prove that I'm not lost to the darkness. But there's something else. A part of me wants the acceptance and respect I was promised by pledging myself to Voldemort's cause. Deep down, the desperate child in me still aches for affirmation, for that sense of belonging that was dangled in front of me as the prize for loyalty. The chains are strong. If I betray the Dark Lord, my own brothers in arms would torture and kill me. My name would be despised in the only circles that have ever recognized me. And even if I found a way to run, the unstoppable wrath of Lord Voldemort would track me down, or worse, harm those I care about. That is, if there's anyone left who I still care about, or who cares about me in turn, if you read such means. That harm I care about, or would care about me in turn. Word spreads among the Death Eaters that Voldemort has returned to Hogwarts. Harry Potter has been spotted. The call to arms is immediate. An unstoppable wave of black-robed wizards, including me, apparates to the outskirts of the Forbidden Forest, then creeps onto castle grounds. The Dark Lord addresses us in a voice that crackles with icy resolve, commanding us to break Hogwarts' defenses and deliver him the boy who lived. We will crush all resistance. In that moment, I feel both dread and a twinge of dark pride. This is the culmination of the plan we've been part of since the Dark Lord's resurrection. Yet, as the castle looms under the moonlight, an image from my childhood flickers in my mind. I see the Great Hall from a school visit. Warm, welcoming, candles floating overhead. I can't stifle the pang in my chest. And tonight we march in to defile it. I must decide whether to fully commit and prove myself once more, or to find a way out. To let this be the last time I raise my wand in service to a cause I've grown to despise. As I slip into the shadowy courtyard, the decision tightens around my throat. Run, or fight for a twisted vision. My wand feels heavy in my hand, a constant reminder that I'm about to unleash curses on children, on teachers, on people who deserve a chance at a better world. But my fear shackles me. That fear of retribution, of losing every last scrap of protection. And so, with trembling breath, I press forward, stepping into Hogwarts to claim one more battle for the Dark Lord. The attack begins. The wards surrounding Hogwarts crackle, and the sky above flashes green and red, as if the night itself is in agony. Giants on the Dark Lord's side slam battering rams into the gates, while werewolves prowl the forests. The Death Eaters, including me, have forced our way through weakened defences. I split off with a small cadre, Dolohov, Rookwood, and a couple more. McGonagall and the other professors fight back like cornered lion. Great columns in the entrance hall explode from spells, sending marble shards in all directions. Amid the chaos, I cast a shield charm reflexively to protect myself from a burst of rubble. My job is to sow terror, to incapacitate defenders, and ensure the hallways are cleared so the Dark Lord can proceed. My mask presses against my face like a suffocating brand of shame. Every hex that lights up the air around me reaffirms my participation in this heinous act. Yet I hesitate when a student, maybe a 7th year from Gryffindor, crosses my path, wand trembling in his hand. He looks terrified. Our gazes lock. Everything in me says, cast the curse, don't falter. But my wand hand lowers a fraction. He flees, stumbling over debris, disappearing behind a broken statue. My momentary mercy doesn't go unnoticed. Dolohov sneers in my direction, his eyebrows arched. He says nothing, but the betrayal in my eyes must be as clear as day. As I press on, hoping Dolohov didn't catch my reluctance, I round a corner only to nearly trip over a fallen figure. A second-year Slytherin girl lies on the floor, petrified by fear or perhaps from a stray jinx. Her green-trimmed robe is torn, and tears cut through the grime on her cheeks. She's from the house I was taught to revere, yet here she is, just another child in the crossfire. She looks up at me, sees the dark mark on my forearm, and whimpers in terror. My heart clenches. This is not how I imagined a glorious victory. This is not power, this is slaughter. With quick wand work, I conjure a shielding bubble around her, hoping it will protect her from stray curses until the chaos passes. Her eyes widen, and I murmur something I never thought I'd say in the thick of war. Stay down, don't move. My voice is muffled behind the mask, but I hope she understands. As I leave her behind, a burning realization seizes me. Everything we do here is sowing despair. Even those who might align with us, pure-blood Slytherins, aren't safe from the bloodshed. My mind loops 1,000 conflicting thoughts. Shouldn't we be saving them? Weren't we supposed to be forging a new world order that protected pure-blood lines? Why does it feel like we are simply devouring everything in our path? The corridors ring with screams and shouts. Spells arc overhead like fireworks gone horribly wrong. My group crosses paths with a team of teachers. Flitwick leads the charge with impeccable charms, sending a shimmering wave of force that knocks a few of my allies to the ground. I scramble for cover, mind reeling with the knowledge that I'm fighting the teachers who taught me my craft. Amid the swirling chaos, I notice Rookwood's wand pointed at me, or so it seems. Not lurches, but he's actually aiming past me at the half-collapsed wall, presumably to flush out hidden defenders. The wall explodes, sending stones and dust rolling everywhere. I'm thrown back, my ribs screaming as I collide with a battered suit of armor. Dazed, I watch Rookwood and Dolohov press on, leaving me behind in the swirling haze of debris. I scramble to my feet, coughing. For a moment, I consider turning around, slipping away, abandoning this cursed war. My heart thunders, and a swirl of adrenaline urges me to break free. But if I vanish now, the Death Eaters will mark me as a deserter. If they find me later, I'll suffer an unspeakable fate. Plus, part of me, some last shred of misguided loyalty or habit, urges me to see this through. Then I see her, a small shape cowering in the corridor's corner, arms shielding her face. Another student, maybe a first year. Her bright eyes peer at me with dread. I realize the corridor behind her is caving in from the blasts. If she stays, she'll be buried under stone. Without thinking, I sprint over and grab her arm, tugging her to safety. She shrieks but doesn't fight me, and I pull her into a side passage. The roof collapses, mere seconds after we dash away, the dust choking the air. She stares at me, tears streaming down her cheeks. I can't bring myself to speak. I merely raise my wand, and for a crazy second she might think I'm about to kill her, but instead I conjure a guiding light. "Go," I rasp, voice hoarse, pointing her toward the far side of the passage. "Find your friends. I'll keep them off you." It's a lie, or maybe it's the truth. I'm not sure. But I can't stand here and watch her die. I'm left in the corridor, mask askew, reeling from the moral crisis swamping me. That's when Dolohov and Rookwood emerge from the swirling dust. They stare at me with narrowed eyes. Rookwood's wand flicks, and I barely manage to deflect a stinging hex. "What are you playing at, Raoul?" Dolohov snarls, voice dripping with suspicion. I open my mouth, at a loss for words. "Keeping them busy," I manage, lying through my teeth. "I chased one of them off down that corridor." He looks me up and down, noticing the cracks in my mask, my unusual exhaustion, or perhaps the guilt etched across my face. "We have work to do," he finally barks. "The Dark Lord demands full control of the castle. Don't dawdle." Then they move on, leaving me to simmer in my own turmoil. I'm still pinned by my fear of them, fear of Voldemort, fear of what it means if I truly try to leave. So, I follow in their wake, a reluctant shadow of a Death Eater. As the minutes bleed into hours, the catastrophic crescendo rises. The battered corridors open up into the main courtyard. The stone walls of Hogwarts, once so proud, are scarred with craters and scorch marks. Flares of spells cut through the night. Amid the swirling chaos, I spot the last stand forming in the Great Hall. Hogwarts defenders are gathering, calling in the wounded, setting up barricades. The Dark Lord's whisper echoes through the castle, a chilling ultimatum to Harry Potter. My heart drums in my ears. Around me, Death Eaters slip into position, forming lines to press the advantage. A savage sense of finality grips the air, as though the universe itself holds its breath. Voldemort's voice booms, commanding Potter to come forward. The tension is so thick I can scarcely breathe. The Great Hall is the stage for the final confrontation. Teachers, students, and members of the Order of the Phoenix brace themselves behind overturned house tables. Some of my fellow Death Eaters snarl challenges. Others look grimly resolved. In a swirl of motion, hexes erupt. The hall becomes a tempest of spells. McGonagall, Slughorn, and Kingsley Shacklebolt charge at Voldemort, while Death Eaters fling lethal magic at them in turn. I duck behind a toppled Ravenclaw table, my wand trembling in my sweat-slicked hand. 2 or 3 defenders see my mask and launch stunners my way. I block them, but only half-heartedly, as if hoping maybe they'll disarm me and end my moral agony. Then I see something that cements my crisis. Across the hall, a little cluster of younger students stand behind older classmates, fear etched into every line of their faces. Their wands quiver, and yet they remain. They stand to defend their home. The sight unravels my last shred of loyalty to the Dark Lord. Suddenly, a bright green beam slices through the air, a killing curse from one of my own side, aimed at those children. My training and instincts take over. I turn. Cast Protego! The shield deflects the curse just in time, the green light ricocheting off into a harmless spark against the wall. The Death Eater who cast it, a man I vaguely recognize by his stance, stares at me, outraged. I tear off my mask, letting it clatter to the floor. My chest heaves, conflicting emotions raging in my eyes. At that moment, I can't hide behind anonymity. I'd rather face death than continue this carnage. Stop! I shout, voice cracking with desperation. The Death Eater snarls, raising his wand to attack me now. Spellfire scorches the ground between us. I roll to the side and return a disarming charm, my voice trembling. We trade spells in a vicious back and forth. For the first time, I am truly fighting a brother in arms. The irony is staggering. My heart clutches in my chest, but I push through. The curses I fling are no longer meant to terrorize the innocent, but to defend them from the monstrous cause I once served. A loud, thunderous roar shakes the hall, a swirl of unstoppable magic as Harry Potter and Lord Voldemort lock eyes. Bright arcs of energy crackle around them, a cosmic clash of wills. Everyone else halts for a split second, drawn to the epicenter of light at the center of the Great Hall. My duel with the furious Death Eater falters momentarily as we both glance at the final confrontation. We see Harry's wand. No, that's not quite right. The Elder Wand, spitting golden sparks. Voldemort's fury twists his features into something inhuman. An explosive crack reverberates. Voldemort's killing curse rebounds. There's a deafening boom, and in the next breath, the Dark Lord collapses. Silence blankets the hall, punctured only by the ragged breathing of the living. Our eyes take in the impossible. The mightiest dark wizard in centuries lying lifeless on the cold stone floor. The hush that follows is surreal, like emerging from a violent storm into sudden calm. Wand lights glimmer in the dust. Coughing students, injured defenders, and battered Death Eaters alike stand frozen, trying to comprehend what just happened. The Death Eater I was dueling looks as if he's been struck senseless by shock. We lock eyes. I see the final flicker of conviction drain from him. Without a word, he dashes out of the Great Hall, disappearing down a corridor, perhaps to flee or regroup. Who knows? Others around me sink to their knees in surrender. A wave of relief washes over the defenders, but also grief for the lives lost in this final battle. Exhaustion slams into me, and I slump against an overturned bench, no longer disguised by that black mask. That's when I noticed the students and defenders gawking at me, their wands still raised. I understand. I am, after all, one of them, the enemy. My wand hand, shaking, releases my wand. It clatters to the floor. I'm Sorry, I rasp, voice drenched in remorse. I wanted, but I can't finish the sentence. Perhaps I wanted redemption, or maybe I just wanted the horror to end. McGonagall, battered and breathless, stands with her wand leveled at me, eyes brimming with a cocktail of sorrow and fury. Several auras and teachers step closer. For a moment, I truly believe this is the end. They'll kill me where I stand, or I'll be sent to Azkaban. But there's a flicker of mercy in her expression. War has ended, and with the Dark Lord gone, maybe there's room for something else. Get up, she says, voice trembling slightly. You'll face justice for what you've done. Her words are a condemnation, but ironically, they lift a weight from my chest. I will answer for my crimes, and that's something I deserve. Yet it's also a chance, no matter how slim, to forge a new path, away from the shadows. I stand slowly, hands raised in surrender. Auras move in, binding my wrists with a magical rope. Others gather the remaining Death Eaters and herd them into a ragged cluster. Spells that once were used to defend Hogwarts are now used to secure it. In the aftermath, I watch as students are escorted to the infirmary, teachers try to salvage the castle's shattered corridors, and families reunite with tears and relief. Sorrow clings to the air. The dead are laid out respectfully. My chest squeezes with regret, thinking of all the suffering we inflicted. Yet in the swirl of heartbreak, there's also a current of hope. Hope that the darkest days might be over. Who am I now, after betraying the cause I served half my life? I'm not foolish enough to think everything is forgiven. But as I marched past broken columns and grieving survivors, I see something stirring in my own heart. I risked my life in those final moments to deflect a killing curse from a child. I faced down a fellow Death Eater to protect Hogwarts students. Perhaps that counts for something. I can't escape the knowledge that I chose to walk in darkness for years. The consequences of my actions, the families torn apart, the friends lost, will follow me. But maybe, just maybe, there's a slender road ahead that leads to atonement. I glance down, noticing the rope that binds my wrists. It's not comfortable, but it feels right. A reflection of the accountability I've avoided for too long. As dawn breaks, the castle floors are strewn with rubble and heartbreak. The house banners, torn and singed, still hang overhead. Auras corral me and the rest of the captive Death Eaters through the great hall's massive doors. The corridors echo with groans of the injured and hushed conversations. The sense of finality is crushing, and yet there is a seed of renewal in the air.